Greetings, students. This recording showcases Chapter 3. We delve into the art of seamlessly merging supply and demand by applying the fundamentals covered in the previous chapters. Market analysis is no arcane science. It's the study of how buyers and sellers interact, how prices are determined, and how resources are allocated. It's about understanding the delicate dance between supply and demand and how it shapes the economic landscape. So, what are the key concepts that help us unravel this intricate ballet? Let's take a quick peek. First up, we have elasticity. This is about how much the supply or demand of a product changes when factors like price or income change. It's the reason why you might think twice about buying that designer handbag. If its price skyrockets, but won't bat an eyelid when the price of rice goes up by a few cents. Next, we delve into the intriguing concept of willingness to pay and sell. This is all about the maximum price a consumer is willing to part with for a good or service, and the minimum price a seller is willing to accept. It helps shape the demand and supply curves and ultimately determines the market equilibrium. Finally, we have surplus. This is the economic benefit that consumers and producers derive from market transactions. It's about the extra satisfaction you get when you snag a great deal and the additional profit a seller makes when they sell at a higher price. By the end of this video, you will understand the hidden forces that shape the prices and availability of the goods and services you use every day. You'll be able to see the world of commerce with a new lens, appreciating the beautiful, complex, and sometimes surprising ways in which markets work. So buckle up and let's embark on this exciting journey together. One of the key concepts in analyzing markets is elasticity. Imagine it as a rubber band that stretches and contracts in response to various forces. But instead of physical forces, we're talking about economic ones. Changes in price, changes in income, or changes in the price of related goods. Let's start with the price elasticity of demand. Picture a pair of designer shoes you've been eyeing. If the price drops, you're likely to buy, right? If the price shoots up, you might reconsider. This is the essence of price elasticity of demand. It measures how much the quantity demanded changes when the price changes. Now, imagine a heart medication. Whether the price goes up or down, people who need it will still buy it. These are examples of elastic and inelastic goods, respectively. Luxury goods like designer shoes tend to be elastic, while necessities like medicine are usually inelastic. But what about the other side of the equation? Enter the price elasticity of supply. This measures how producers respond to price changes. Let's take a look at a local farmer. If the price of wheat suddenly skyrockets, he can't immediately plant more wheat to take advantage of the higher price because it takes time for wheat to grow. This is an example of inelastic supply. However, if the price of wheat remains high for a long time, the farmer might decide to plant more wheat next season, making the supply more elastic in the long run. Next up is cross-price elasticity of demand. This measures how the demand for one good changes when the price of another good changes. For example, if the price of coffee goes up, some people might switch to tea, indicating that these two goods are substitutes with a positive cross-price elasticity. On the other hand, think about smartphones and their apps. If the price of smartphones falls, more people might buy them, and consequently more people might download apps. These are examples of complementary goods with a negative cross-price elasticity. Lastly, we have income elasticity, which shows how demand changes with income. When times are good and incomes rise, people tend to buy more steak and less ground beef. These are examples of normal goods and inferior goods, respectively. Normal goods have positive income elasticity, meaning demand increases with income, while inferior goods have negative income elasticity, meaning demand decreases as income increases. So, the next time you see a price change for a product, think about its elasticity. Is it a necessity or a luxury? How quickly can the producers respond to the change? These are the questions that elasticity helps us answer, providing us with a deeper understanding of how markets work and how consumers and producers respond to changes in market conditions. Behind every product's price tag lies a tale of two desires: the consumer's willingness to pay and the producer's willingness to sell. Let's start with the consumer's perspective. You see, every time we decide to buy something, we have a maximum price in mind that we're willing to pay for it. This is influenced by several factors, including how much we value the product, our budget, and the available alternatives. This willingness to pay forms the demand curve in economics. The higher our willingness to pay, the steeper the demand curve. Now, from the producer's angle, they have a minimum price they're willing to accept to part with their product. This is the producer's willingness to sell. It's shaped by factors like production costs, profit margins, and market competition. This willingness to sell forms the supply curve. The higher the producer's willingness to sell, the steeper the supply curve. Now imagine this. On one side, we have the demand curve sloping downwards, representing consumers' willingness to pay. On the other side, we have the supply curve sloping upwards, representing producers' willingness to sell. Where these two curves intersect is what we call market equilibrium. This is the sweet spot where the price is just right for both consumers and producers. The quantity of goods consumers want to buy equals the quantity producers want to sell. This concept of market equilibrium was beautifully articulated by the renowned economist Adam Smith. He referred to it as the invisible hand of the market. It's like an unseen force that guides the market towards a balance between the quantity of goods consumers want to buy and the quantity of goods producers want to sell. So, next time you see a price tag on a product, remember it's not just a number. It's a reflection of the delicate balance between the consumer's willingness to pay and the producer's willingness to sell. Remember, the invisible hand of the market is essentially the aggregate of all individual willingness to pay and sell. Equilibrium doesn't just balance supply and demand, it also maximizes the economic benefit or surplus. Now, what is this surplus we're talking about? Well, in economic terms, surplus refers to the extra benefit that's derived in any transaction. This benefit is usually categorized into two types: consumer surplus and producer surplus. Let's start with consumer surplus. Picture yourself at a market. You see a lovely piece of art that you're willing to pay 100 JD for. But as luck would have it, the seller is asking for only 50 JD. You happily make the purchase and walk away with an extra 50 JD that you were willing to part with but didn't have to. This 50 JD is your consumer surplus, the extra benefit you, as a consumer, get from paying less than your maximum willingness to pay. On the other side of the coin, we have producer surplus. This is the extra benefit sellers get from receiving more than their minimum willingness to sell. Let's say you're a coffee farmer, you'd be willing to sell your beans for $10 per kilogram, but the market price is actually $15. That extra $5 you make on each kilogram is your producer surplus, the benefit you, as a producer, receive from selling at a higher price than the lowest you'd be willing to accept. Now, when we add these two surpluses together, we get what's called total surplus. This is the overall economic benefit to society from the production and consumption of a good or service. It represents the total well-being derived from a market transaction. In an ideal world, the market equilibrium, the price and quantity where supply equals demand, is where this total surplus is maximized. In other words, it's the sweet spot where the sum of consumer and producer surplus is the highest. But what happens if we move away from this sweet spot? Well, if fewer units are sold, some possible surplus is lost because there are still willing buyers and sellers who aren't able to make a transaction. If more units are sold, the additional cost of producing and consuming these units exceeds the additional benefit derived from them. This lost surplus, whether from underproduction or overproduction, is what economists call deadweight loss. It's like a piece of the economic pie that's gone missing, reducing the total well-being that could have been achieved. So, in essence, the market equilibrium isn't just a balance, it's the sweet spot where total economic well-being is maximized. It's where the magic of the invisible hand that Adam Smith talked about comes into play, guiding buyers and sellers towards the most efficient outcome. And in this efficiency, we find the story of surplus, a tale of maximized benefits and minimized losses. So the market equilibrium isn't just a balance, it's the sweet spot where total economic well-being is maximized. Now that we understand these concepts, let's see them in action. Market analysis is not just about understanding the theory, it's about applying these concepts to real-world scenarios. Let's take the recent increase in the price of gasoline as an example. As the price of gas goes up, the demand for it doesn't necessarily drop dramatically. Why? Because for many, gas is a necessity, not a luxury. This is an example of price inelastic demand. But if we look at the long-term effects, people might start considering alternative modes of transport such as public transit or electric cars. This is where the supply becomes more elastic over time. But the gas price hike doesn't just affect the market for fuel. It has a ripple effect on other markets as well. For instance, the demand for gas-guzzling SUVs might decrease, an example of negative or cross-price elasticity, as these vehicles become more expensive to run. Conversely, the demand for electric cars might increase, a positive cross-price elasticity, as they become relatively more economical. Now, let's consider a new government policy that introduces a tax on luxury goods. This could lead to a decrease in consumer surplus as consumers are paying more than they were previously willing to for these goods. On the other hand, the government revenue from this tax could be seen as a form of producer surplus. And finally, let's think about the introduction of a minimum wage policy. If set above the equilibrium wage, it could lead to a surplus of labor, or in other words, unemployment. This is an example of deadweight loss, as the additional cost of higher wages for employers exceeds the additional benefit for workers. As you can see, market analysis isn't just an academic exercise. It's a crucial tool for understanding and navigating the world of commerce. We've journeyed through the world of market analysis, unraveled its key concepts, and seen them in action. We've delved into the intriguing realm of elasticity, where we found out how much supply or demand changes when factors like price or income fluctuate. We discovered that necessities like food tend to be inelastic, while luxuries like high-end cars are elastic, painting a vivid picture of our diverse market behaviors. We also uncovered the concept of willingness to pay and sell, the driving forces behind the demand and supply curves. Remember, the intersection of these curves is the market equilibrium, the magical point where the amount consumers want to buy equals the amount producers want to sell. It's the invisible hand of the market, guiding us towards economic efficiency. Then we ventured into the story of surplus. We learned that the equilibrium maximizes the economic benefit to society, known as total surplus. We learned about consumer surplus, the extra benefit consumers get from paying less than their maximum willingness to pay, and producer surplus, the extra benefit sellers get from receiving more than their minimum willingness to sell. These concepts aren't just theoretical constructs. They're real, tangible forces that shape our everyday lives. Every time you buy a loaf of bread, fill up your car with gas, or decide to splurge on a fancy new gadget, you're participating in this grand economic dance. You're responding to changes in price, income, and other market conditions, and your choices in turn influence those conditions. As you navigate the world, keep these concepts in mind. Watch how changes in price affect demand for different goods. Look for examples of elasticity, willingness to pay, and surplus in your daily life. And most importantly, never stop asking questions. The world of market analysis is vast and complex, but also fascinating and deeply relevant to our lives. Remember, every price tag has a story to tell about supply, demand, and human behavior. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning. Thank you for listening.